I made a video yesterday mentioning that Indians regard themselves as superpowers and look down on Southeast Asian countries. It was just the weekend, and I routinely teased India to relax. Unexpectedly, it caused a lot of discussion. Many Southeast Asian netizens said that the video accurately described the character of Indians. However, some Indian netizens accused me of taking money from the Chinese and slandering India. Here I must clarify. 1. The Chinese did not buy me because I am Chinese. 2. I did not slander India. India is bad enough. An Indian netizen said angrily, "We have never considered ASEAN. Our future is not determined by ASEAN. We are good friends with Japan, but China and Japan are not friends." To be honest, this view represents many Indians. In the minds of Indians, as a superpower, they naturally interact with the world powers of the United States, Russia, and Japan. How can they interact with backward organizations like ASEAN? However, some netizens sharply criticized him. Go to Japan and ask, how many Japanese regard you as friends? Yes, this sentence hurts the Indians. You think you are a superpower and are on an equal footing with Western countries, Russia, China, and Japan. However, the fact is that in their eyes, you are just clowns. If their foreign policy requires your cooperation, they will throw you a bone and let you roar at your opponents. No one really regards India as a friend. Otherwise, why doesn't Russia share the fifth-generation aircraft with India, while Pakistan can easily lock China's J-35? Indians joined the quadrilateral security dialogue and thought they had become real friends with the United States, Japan, and Australia. The actual situation is more like a rich man with 2 followers and a pug. When ASEAN took the lead in establishing RCEP, China and Japan, as world powers, attached great importance to it. After repeated negotiations, the parties finally reached an agreement that ASEAN, China, Japan, South Korea, and India were all founding members. However, Modi believed that the agreement was unfair to India, and he temporarily regretted and bargained. Because in Modi's mind, RCEP is incomplete without India, a superpower. But to India's surprise, ASEAN, China, Japan, and South Korea all rejected India's blackmail, and India eventually stayed out of RCEP. But this did not prevent RCEP from surpassing the European Union and becoming the world's largest free trade zone. RCEP has given ASEAN member countries more development opportunities, and many Chinese manufacturing capacities have also entered Southeast Asia, promoting the industrialization process of ASEAN countries. The success of RCEP has also enabled ASEAN to move from a regional political force to a global political force. Today, India is still a country with strict trade barriers and has not joined any influential free trade zone. Vietnam, which they look down upon, has not only joined RCEP, but also signed a free trade agreement with the United States and joined the CPTPP led by Japan. Faced with Vietnam, which is closer to China, the world's factory, has a higher level of education, stronger discipline, and is more hardworking, what qualifications does India have to dream of becoming the world's manufacturing center? Putting aside Malaysia and Singapore, they already have a mature industrial system. I believe that if Indonesia can speed up the construction of infrastructure, they can also undertake more manufacturing capacity than India. There are both cooperation and conflicts between China and ASEAN countries. For example, China's sovereignty claims in the South China Sea are in serious conflict with Vietnam and the Philippines. Even if China's military strength is far ahead of these countries, when dealing with conflicts, it sends maritime police instead of Chinese troops. Faced with the Philippine warships stranded on an island, China has acquiesced to the Philippines' transportation of supplies for many years instead of directly sinking them. Even though the Philippines has provoked many times, the Chinese have insisted on confronting it with equal strength. You can imagine that if China is a country like India, it can send a few destroyers to defeat the Philippine Navy. Will it tolerate the Philippines so much? Why does China do this? Because the Philippines has the entire ASEAN behind it. China may look down on any country in Southeast Asia, but facing an organization with more than 600 million people, rich resources, and important positions, China is more willing to cooperate with it rather than confront it. China actively maintains good relations with Singapore, relying on its key influence on ASEAN to resolve the hostility of ASEAN countries towards China. Facts have proved that no matter how many differences there are between the two sides, mutual respect and cooperation can always win. If China, like India, wants to use aircraft carriers and nuclear weapons at every turn, will ASEAN still be willing to do business with China? If force and arrogance can solve problems, what is the point of diplomacy? On the contrary, let's look at India's foreign policy, which is full of arrogance. As the country with the largest number of extremely poor people and the dirtiest environment in the world, they have always pursued great power chauvinism. Not only did it annex Sikkim by force, but it also shamelessly said that Sikkimese people were 100% willing to be ruled by India. It even guided the diplomacy of Bhutan and Nepal, and it also deeply intervened in the internal affairs of Maldives. I am curious about what a country like this, where people have problems even eating and going to the toilet, wants to guide others to do? Guide Nepal to become a country where Hindus persecute Muslims? Guide Bhutan to become a country with cow dung all over the streets and stinking? As a country that has never been truly unified in history and has been conquered by various foreign forces for a long time. As a country that has suffered from colonial plunder and infringement. India does not oppose imperialism, but practices it. Such a country also wants to become a superpower. I can tell the Indians very clearly. From the moment you rejected RCEP, you have lost the entire Southeast Asia. In the future, if you want to make friends with ASEAN, it depends on whether they are willing. China is vigorously supporting Nepal and is also actively communicating with Bhutan. Together with Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and quasi-ally Pakistan, where China has invested heavily, you will face an anti-Indian alliance. Don't call the Americans brothers all the time. The United States is far away on the other side of the earth. You should first find a way to get along well with your neighbors. Before becoming a superpower, feed more people, build more toilets, and don't study the patchwork aircraft carriers all the time. Masturbation will not make a person strong, and fantasies will not make a country strong. I hope you understand this most basic truth. Here I would like to say something to another Indian netizen who advocated that India and the United States block the Strait of Malacca. The Americans are also trying to win over ASEAN, and they are not as stupid as India. If the United States wants to go to war with China or ASEAN, it can do it itself. Why does it need to bring you along as an additional burden?